Welcome to another episode of Grinds My Gears. I'm Ashton, and we got one of my favorite people on the planet today. But before we get to him, log on to www.ashtonandariMMA.com and get your gear. Winter is here, so we got the hoodies back in style. The Dilf Bod shirts. You want to represent that Dilf Bod? Use discount code DILF Dilf. Get yourself 10% off and look fly in some sexy Dilf Bod shirts. So, without further ado, I know him as Coach G, but his name is Gaétan. So that's a beautiful name, Coach. I'm just saying.
Thanks, champ. I appreciate that.
Did you ever use that with the ladies to like and put
You know what? It's one of those things where like it's so unique that growing up as a kid, you hated it.
Yeah.
Because like it's so different. And like I have to say my first name like at least 3 times before anyone would ever get it.
Yeah.
and so like it was like G, I'm just G. And then but as you get older and you get more like mature and wise and you start to learn more about yourself, you appreciate it more, right? So like I didn't use it for the longest time, and then now I'm like, I use it more and more.
Shoot, I have a basic stupid English name. If I had like Crew Joey, like I would have like his last name is De La Flores. I just put like a little Spanish spin on that. I can't do that. I have a simple white person name. But damn.
Okay. I have a white French person's name, so you can't go wrong.
the white French version sounds better than.
well, I am white and French, so I guess it kind of fits, right?
But have you ever looked up your name, like what it means?
Well, the translation in English would be Jason. So like it's like a French verse. So I used to tell people Jason all the time. But like the meaning, I haven't really looked deep into the meaning, to be totally honest with you.
Well, it's still better than mine. Ashton means town under the ash tree.
There could be something deeper there. There could be something deeper.
Anyway, I like to ask every person I talk to who's in the fitness business, like simply, how has fitness and how has like business been for you? Obviously, the last it's been 20 plus months. It's how has it been for you in terms of keeping things going, keeping clients motivated, and just keeping business running, given the fact that, I think it's pretty knowledgeable now that fitness has been one of the most scrutinized and attacked industries during this time, right?
Yeah, and like I think the first thing to preface, and I don't want this to sound arrogant because I think it might sound arrogant, but you know me well enough that I'm not that person. That I don't see myself as someone who works in the fitness industry. I think that's one term. Of people who work at like gyms and these kind of places, they're in the fitness industry. I'm in the performance industry, so it's to me a lot different. Do I have a diversification of clients? Absolutely. I have world-class athletes. I have a 70-year-old lady who had multiple surgeries that I work with, right? But at the end of the day, whenever I get a new client, it's this whole screening process of why are you here? Is it to improve, your quote unquote performance? And by the way, that includes wellness, functionality, all of those beautiful things. And because I qualify people before they start working with me, I don't need to like motivate them. I don't need to see if they're going to show up if something's closed or they can't get to me. Like they're already motivated because they've been qualified, that like they'll find a way. So like in a roundabout way, now to answer your question, I've been very grateful that this whole difficult situation hasn't really impacted me on the same level, because the people I work with, we have found creative ways to continue doing what we do, because they're not looking for an excuse to not show up, so to speak, right? So again, I've been very fortunate throughout this whole thing. Obviously, there's been like, especially in the very beginning, it was really hard because
there was so much uncertainty,
lockdowns, right? And by extreme lockdowns, right? So you were looking over your shoulder, even if you're going to the soccer field to train somebody because you're outside, or for whatever those things we're trying to do. But like, I have found ways, we've done a lot of Zoom type stuff, which is not my favorite thing, but it's better than nothing. So Been
Well,
pretty fortunate.
yeah, I'm me too. So I'm good. Like I knew your situation was all right, but it's glad to hear that it was able you were able to do that too. And I felt the same way where the people you work with are highly motivated, right? So
Right.
I didn't really have an issue trying to get people to continue. It wasn't that because they were simply they wanted to train, they wanted to be healthy, they wanted to keep that up no matter what, even if there was a lockdown, even if there was whatever, they still wanted to work, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Um, Now I've noticed this, and I'm sure you noticed it too. Is like you know how initially when the lockdowns and this whole thing happened, the media perception of like fitness was that like gyms will be dead, fitness will have a hard time coming back. But I've noticed like gyms are incredibly busy. People want to get back in there. Uh, from all the coaches I have and owners I know, their businesses are starting to boom again in terms of new clientele. Have you noticed the same thing as well as me?
Um, it's funny because Coach PK, who was I think he was on your show
Yeah, he was on.
already.
Yeah, he was on. Yeah.
My brother from another mother. We did a podcast on our podcast. I'm not gonna, strong athlete
Yeah.
life. I'm
No,
not
you
going to
can. I don't care. I'm not
plug
about.
my own podcast on your podcast, but
Good.
it's all good. Um, this whole thing, it actually, I'm going to kind of say the opposite for 1 second, but then I'm also going to probably agree with you in the end. But this has been like one of the biggest missed opportunities. You
Yeah.
know, this, you know, and if you really want to get into this topic, I'm a fringe guy, so I have very interesting things to say. But this is a huge opportunity for people to actually take charge of their health when it's been a quote unquote health crisis
Yeah.
and people's health has been in danger or at risk. I would love to have believed that people would be like, you know what, I'm going to really take charge of my health now because when these things happen, because this is not going to be the last time something is going to
No.
happen. Trust me, get used to this. This
The
is like
beginning.
Christmas every year, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I think there's been a lot of missed opportunities of people to really jump in and take charge of their health.
Yeah.
However, like I think now it's starting to unfold where the fear that people had that was preventing them from engaging in anything wellness oriented is starting to dissipate. And I think we're starting to see more new people come around. And then, for my business in the performance area, the challenge was obviously preparing athletes for sports that aren't existing at the time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So like now that sports are really starting to come back in and teams and all these things are starting to come in, you're starting to see a little more people start to show up. But again, at the same time, I didn't lose anybody during this whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been consistent.
Yeah. And I mean, from what I've noticed, especially like in my at our jujitsu club, is a lot of new people have joined up and jumped in, and I think mostly it's not necessarily because they were like sitting at home during the pandemic and lockdowns, like I can't wait to try jujitsu.
Totally.
I think it was more of the fact that coming out of this thing, they're looking for people, a sense of community, and to not necessarily because I don't think I have a few friends who are work at head office for like Good Life and stuff. It's
Yeah.
they're not those organizations aren't ticking upwards. It's the smaller gyms where they can provide that sense of community, where they can provide an activity that people can go and do, whether it be CrossFit, whether it be anything, but they're around other people. And I think that as this continues, as like you said, the fear continues to dissipate, we'll see a lot more people like that because the mental health aspect to everything that has gone on has been downplayed significantly. Like I don't think I know you know what I'm talking about, but I think like I read this morning or yesterday the opioid numbers, the numbers for opioid deaths and overdoses, and they're through the roof. And it's just almost like we don't even care about those people and why they even took that action, right? Like those numbers didn't increase just by coincidence. They increased because of the circumstances of the situation. But even coming out of it, it's like we're still not talking about that, and there's still thousands and thousands of people that were good before but they're not good now coming out of it. And those are the people that really need the attention and really need the help and really need, services like we provide and other people provide to bring them out of it, right?
Yeah, I think one interesting thing to your point is with this whole like lockdown thing and like gyms being closed, what's going to happen now? I think the value of the one-on-one, let's just call it trainer for right now, is going to go through the roof because the people that were trainers before,
Yeah.
and once things closed down and they just did it because it was a job. There's a lot like this, like go to a Good Life or a lot of these, trainers, they're just doing it like it's just an everyday job for them.
Yeah.
They don't do it anymore. They went and started working somewhere else because that industry closed. So wherever they can work. So what's going to happen now is I think the quality of trainers and stuff is going to go up because the people that really wanted it to be their career, they're still in it.
They're still in it. They
And the
fought.
people who were just doing it as a job,
Yeah.
they're gone. So and I guess I think the value of doing a one-on-one is definitely going to go up. And to your point, people are going to really want that human contact, that human connection,
Yeah.
which they've been lacking. And I would like to believe they're going to appreciate that the value of it is much higher than they had previously thought.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I've encountered, I don't know if you encountered, is when people don't have to necessarily pay for it out of pocket, they don't appreciate it as much. Like when I was working in a gym for a gym, there would be a lot of clients that came in that their work subsidized half of it or subsidized the whole thing as a part of a benefit package. And so what I noticed is sometimes those people would just miss sessions, they wouldn't show up because they didn't have the value for it, so to speak, because they didn't have to pay for it. Right. And now coming out of a situation like this where health is it's literally at the forefront of everything. Well, how much are you willing to invest into your health? Because the key word is invest. I think paying is the wrong term to use. People think I'm paying somebody for exercise. No, I'm investing in my health. That's how I kind of phrase it to people when I talk to them, and I'm sure you do the same thing too, right?
Yeah, one like my background, one of my, you know, I hate this word of like credentials, but I'm a kinesiologist
Yeah,
and basically a movement therapist is part of what I do. So as you know, I treat a lot of people with injuries and stuff like that as well. And for my whole career, people have been like, "Oh, are you covered under benefits?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not." And I'm actually happy about that. And it's exactly the point you said because if it's covered under benefits, people do not appreciate it. They do not value it. If it's not coming out of their hard-earned money, that the value of it is insignificant, and they'll come and they'll go. It's like we talked about in the beginning, like qualifying somebody.
yeah,
I qualify people to see if they're the real thing and if something we're going to actually commit to actually get a result and do something. So same
yeah.
thing.
Same thing. Now with it's this whole thing is it angers me talking about it sometimes, but uh they're always preaching like this is about health. It's about your health and taking, like we just talked about, taking charge of your health. We obviously have a situation where there is a treatment that is being pushed out. I don't want to get into the word because YouTube tends to flag that shit all the
Sure,
time.
sure.
But as much as I like YouTube, fuck YouTube for that.
Yeah,
Uh,
fair enough.
um, it's being heavily pushed. Now, I'm of the firm belief of choice. I think people have freedom to choose what they want to do, but it's not being presented that way right now. I think the heavily used word is mandate.
Sure.
Um, what are your feelings on that? Like basically pressuring people, hey, if you want to make a living, you have to do what you have to put this into your body. Knowing that me and you are more on the holistic side of health, taking charge, building strong body immune systems to this type of disease.
Do you want me to be honest or do you want to be politically correct here?
Oh, be honest, I don't give a fuck.
Like, so again, call me a conspiracy theory if you want, but I speak in facts, just to be
Yeah,
fair. This is not a health pandemic. This is a war on consciousness.
yes,
And if you understand that this is a war on consciousness and you step out of the fear bubble that has been created, you can then make logical, strategic decisions.
Yeah.
Okay. So governments have been controlling populations for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Once they realized that they could use different techniques to manipulate, control, they did it. And to be fair, just to talk out of both sides,
Yeah.
in large groups, communities, civilizations, there does need to be some control, right? If it's just absolute chaos, then we have a real problem,
Yeah,
right?
then it's gonna be like it'd be like Seattle during the last year when they had the
Right, right. So if you understand that this is a war on consciousness, what I mean by that is your consciousness is your creative thought. It's like where you're present to. It's partly where your intuition lies.
yeah,
And if you understand that, people's consciousness is being challenged so that they're making decisions based on what they're told to do and not what feels right to them.
yes,
And since the beginning of this whole thing, I've had hundreds of people literally ask me, what do I think of? And we won't use the term, for the reasons why you mentioned,
yeah,
getting this, getting that. And my answer would always be the same. It's, well, what do you think about it?
yeah,
Does it feel right to you to believe in all of this, to follow the mandates, to do everything? If that feels truly right to you, then I would support you
yeah.
100%.
Same, same.
The flip side, though, is, as I'm sure you've had a lot of people coming to you looking for validation when they say, well, I followed the mandates, but it didn't feel right to me, or I don't agree with it. Well, to me, now you're out of integrity with yourself.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who, unfortunately, their work was forcing them to,
Totally.
and they didn't want to. Like consciously, and I think the other term that could be used correctly is critical thinking. They used their critical thinking abilities. They did their own research, I guess. They made their decision in terms of risk reward.
Yep.
They didn't want to, but they were put in a situation where I have a friend who his wife is pregnant with their, I think, a third kid.
Yeah.
Tons of student loans, doing what he did, getting out there, and he had no choice. It's
Right.
either that or get fired. And he was asking. We had a little group chat going with a bunch of other guys, and he was asking us, what his opinion. And I basically said, I'm like, dude, you have to do what's best for your family, but you also have to be able to look in the mirror and be happy with the person staring back at you. If you can do that, if you could make that decision and you're happy with the person staring back at you, then all the power to you. I support you 100%. But just make sure that when you make these decisions to do these things, it's something that you actually want to do, not because, like, I told my wife, and I'm perfectly happy would have to give up everything in our life to not be forced to do anything. I'm perfectly happy to do that. And I'm not just talking about, vaccines and you see how I did that with the
I like
vaccine.
that. I like that.
Not just talking about,
I'm sure they have that as a keyword too.
yeah. I'm
If
not just
not, they do now.
I'm not just talking about vaccines and stuff. I'm talking about anything. I'm sure you've known me for a while. I'm the kind of person who, good luck trying to control me, right? If you tell me what to do, I won't do it. But if you ask me nicely, I'll consider it. I'll think about it and I'll consider it. So, and I'm sure there's thousands and thousands and thousands of other Canadians and Americans and North Americans just like me. Well, but I'm at the point now where I just don't like being told what to do. So I won't do it if you tell me what to do. But if you present the facts and let me make a decision based on myself, there you go. We're good, right? But that's not how things are working out right now.
I would frame something different that you said earlier. This idea of like people don't have a choice. I don't like to speak that way. I think that we always have a choice. We always have a choice.
Yeah.
It's a matter of what consequences are you willing to deal with the choices that you're going to make.
Yeah.
I've had friends I've been against the whole thing, but again, their jobs were at risk. They were going to get fired, let go. They need that job, or they spent their whole life getting that job, et cetera, et cetera. And they still wanted to do that job.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, they chose to go in the direction they chose. And this is how I coach them through it. They chose to do it because of the reasons, not they had no choice and they did it, because you will suffer with that thinking for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I get what
You
you're saying.
know, so it's important that we understand that, like, you're going to choose what you choose. And if you, it's all about empowerment, brother. Like, we've talked about that,
Yeah.
you and I, a lot as coaching. It's all about empowerment. So we communicate to our people of how to help them empower themselves to make the decision that makes them powerful, not disempowers them and strips their power away.
Yeah. And I feel like that, I mean, that's pretty much what's going on right now throughout the world and throughout Canada. I don't know if you saw what's happening in Austria this morning. They basically mandated it for the entire population. So if you don't get it by February 1st, you're going to jail.
Right.
Which, I mean, I don't have to say that. It's fucking ridiculous. But I
Yeah, I
mean,
haven't seen that. I don't follow.
yeah, I mean, I follow it because I'm an investor and I need to know what's going on around the world because
Sure, sure.
it's some of the stuff we invest in. But um, I mean, it's gotten to a point now where when I get home at night, I don't check anything anymore.
No,
Because there was a certain point in time where it became so infectious in my head that it was all I was thinking about. And it was not only affecting me, it was affecting the relationships around me and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to turn that stuff off because I mean, you've coined the term flamingo neck, right?
yeah,
But I mean, the reason you get flamingo neck is because people
yeah.
are glued to their phones. They're always the benefit of technology has made it um, impossible to escape from the realities of this last 2 years almost, right? And I think the and that's one of the shitty things about technology is that it's always on and it can always this information is always coming to you at so many different angles and some people just can't turn it off. Like I have a hard time dealing with cyberbullying when people talk about cyberbullying.
Sure.
Okay, I have a hard time with that term because for me, it's like if someone's pissing me off online, I delete the comment and then I turn it off, and then it's gone. But for some people, it's not that easy, right? And how do human beings in this technological age kind of how, in your opinion, how do they navigate through that if they are struggling to separate themselves from technology to make their health and well-being better because it's affecting it?
But that's probably like a longer answer than we
I
might
know.
have time for. But let me give you some framework. So I had said earlier, this is a war on consciousness, and war on consciousness is about control,
Yeah.
like I mentioned earlier. And we're in an era now where control is at its peak ability. Before, when we were younger, like, we only really had TV and the radio and the newspaper,
Yeah.
and these are all scripted information to drive behavior. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It makes 100. Yeah.
Yeah, scripted information to drive behavior. But now we have these, like, cyborg devices, which I call them, because if you hold a phone in your hand, you're now officially a cyborg, right? Because the extension of the human self is a digital self where you ask me a question, I don't know the answer, I can get it to you in like 20 seconds,
Yeah.
right? Because of that. So again, before you can make a real shift, you have, in my opinion, you have to have a foundation of understanding.
Yeah. Okay. I got
So
you.
if you understand that being on social media, being on your device, what that's doing to literally your physiology, your internal chemistry,
Yeah.
and you don't have to know it the way I know it, deep understanding. You just have to have a general idea that every time you pick up that phone or that tablet or whatever, there's a little there's a little chemical thing that's happening in your body.
Yeah.
And that's the addiction factor.
Yes. 100%.
Okay. So don't be fooled. Your phone, your tablet, they are designed by very intelligent people
Smartest
to,
people on the
yeah,
planet.
the smart ones, to get you to pick it up, but also to get you not to put it down.
Yeah, and before you continue, this is
Yeah,
one of the like Steve Jobs, the guy who invented the iPad,
yeah,
didn't let him use didn't let his kids use the iPad for
correct.
that very reason. I'll get back to that later, but continue. Sorry.
Correct. And Steve Jobs never put his phone up to his head. That's
Yeah,
another thing. And Steve Jobs has been celebrated as a hero when potentially could be charged with crimes against humanity. But that's a
exactly.
whole nother
That's a whole
conversation.
nother. Yeah.
So like this general understanding first, because for people it's hard to make a decision if you don't have all the information. Is
Yeah.
that fair?
Yeah. Fair enough.
You start to understand that like your device is an addictive platform. And I'm like, well, you an alcoholic? People like, no. Like, why are you not an alcoholic? Because that's really bad. Okay, well, you're a phoneaholic or a
Yeah.
social mediaaholic. I hate those terms. I just made them up and they sound terrible, but it's just for reference, right? And like,
Watch them
there's
start trending tomorrow.
100%, 100%. So it's that is drawing you in, and in order to get off of those things, we need to teach people how to become present.
Yes, and that's one of
Because
the things
when you're
we've always
too
talked
far, yeah,
about. Yeah.
when you're too far ahead of yourself or you're too far behind yourself, it's really difficult to make a real decision.
Yeah.
When you're present and you have a general understanding of the consequence, we talked about before, the
Yeah.
choice, what are the consequences of the choice? Now you have absolute power. Now if you want to pick up your phone, hey man, pick it up, do your thing. You have power of choice. But if you don't want to pick it up and you understand why, then now you also have power to not to. Does
And
that kind of make sense?
it makes sense. Well, I was gonna because you've told me this before.
Yeah.
Remember, it was when I believe I had the ACL surgery done,
Yeah.
and I re-injured the knee, and then I healed it back up, and I was ready to go. And I think we were talking about how I'd be in certain situations where someone would be grabbing a leg or whatever, and I'd always be thinking about my knee and
Totally.
my knee being hurt. And you've told me this before, and I remember this specific incident because it changed my perspective in terms of training and competing and fighting. Because I remember I was sitting on the mat and the coach was showing us a technique or whatever. Then we were gonna go spar, right? And the whole time he was coaching, instead of actually listening, I was thinking about my knee. I'm like, oh
Totally.
man, we're about to go spar. Is my knee gonna hold up? I'm a little tired today. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, wait, Coach G told like none of this shit has happened yet. As far as being present right now, my knee is perfectly 100% healthy. It's 100% ready to go. I have no problems. I'm just making up stories in my head to either talk me out of doing it or to make me think that there's something physically wrong with me when there wasn't. And it was in that specific moment where I would say it changed my thoughts on injuries because I've had injuries after that and I didn't have that same apprehension anymore because it's like I've torn my pec, I've torn my Achilles, especially this Achilles. You would think with an ankle injury that's significant like that, you would be apprehensive, like sparring. I had no problem this time even re-engaging in sport, even doing the same thing that tore it in the first place. I was very confident 2 or 3 months after the surgery to just do it just because I wasn't making up those stories in my head anymore. I was being present, being in the time, and presently I'm 100% healthy. I'm 100% okay, and I think that's one of the things that you know, well, the government has done a good job of taking people out of being present.
Correct.
Presently, you're 100% healthy. You're 100% okay. You shouldn't be afraid of things until you're actually physically sick, ill, dying, keeled over. Like until that point of time, live life is in the present. And so, I mean, thank you for that. I mean, that was years and years and years ago, but I mean, it's true. If anybody is doubting you, that it's 100% true, and everything that you're talking is true because I've used that advice to push past some of my own personal issues.
Yeah. Even like you just said a second ago, in the present, when the things are happening, you don't need to be scared either or fear for it. But hold on, let's go back, because I'll give your audience like that real quick framework, because it's one of the main things that I teach as a coach. It's this timeline of like, you're either in the present, you're living in the future, or you're living in the past. And we will constantly slide along that timeline. And most commonly, when we live in the future, we live in this state of anxiety,
Yes.
right? And I'll give a perfect example that you already brought up today. When we live in the past, we often live in a state of self-doubt.
Yeah.
So I'll give it two examples that you brought up, okay? You said in Austria, as of February 1st, everyone has to get their whatever, or else consequences.
Yeah.
That's future driven anxiety of like, oh my God, that's going to happen there. Is that going to happen here? What's going to happen? What's coming? What's happening? Very anxiety driven. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
And we have zero control in that timeline.
No.
Good. Then the past, we go to the past. You were sitting there on the mat, listening to the coach. You're thinking about the past of the injury that you had and how that happened and all that you went through. And it's this area of self-doubt.
Yes.
And then, as you mentioned, how I bring that together is when you come to the present, none of those things are happening.
Yeah.
They might have happened. They may happen in the future, but they're not happening. And when they're not happening, you can make clear, powerful decisions of how you want to project yourself, how you want to show up, who you want to be in the moment, because that's really the only time you exist, right?
Yeah. And in your opinion, is that how champions are made? Like the best people in the world at what they do, sport or non-sport, whether it be in the boardroom, whether it be um, in the octagon or the ring or the field. Do you think that the people who can be present and focus on that singular task that they're given to do are the ones that pretty much separate the one percenters? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So you would say
Yeah.
100%.
So there's always the people who are just really lucky,
Yeah, yeah.
because just because you're successful, it doesn't mean you're the best, in my opinion. It just means you made it, you survived it. But generally speaking, the people who are the most successful, even whether they know it or not, they're the ones who are able to, I keep sounding like a broken record, but I don't know if kids don't know what a record is anymore. I can't even use that reference. I keep repeating myself. When you come back to that present, you can make the decision that's right in front of you, right? So what do I need to eat? Okay, it's time to eat. Let me focus on eating. Okay, eating's done. Okay, it's time to rest. Let me put my energy into resting. Okay, it's time to train. Let me put my energy into training. It's time to compete. Like, it's what's right in front of me is what I keep focusing on, and that allows me to execute instead of like, man, I wake up, it's Monday morning, like shit, I got training twice today. I got this on Tuesday. They kind of think of too many things. There's the anxiety.
Well, I'm guilty of that too. There's some days where I wake up and I'm extremely exhausted. I'm like, I got 6 clients today. I'm planning to train twice, and then before I even get out of my bed, I'm overwhelming myself. And I mean, it's something that I personally like. I'm comfortable talking about it because I'm sure other people go through it. It's something I'm working through myself, where I'm like, let me just get through the first one. Let me get through the first half of the day, and if my body's not responding, second time is optional. We'll see, but I'm not gonna try and talk myself out of it before the day even goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's an important concept that I teach as well, if people understand it. It's, you kind of mentioned it, we've talked about it before, is your story,
Yeah.
right? If you understand that people speak in stories, and your stories determine your state of being. And like, I learned this concept many years ago in this workshop that I was taking, and it was a super intense workshop. They design it in a way to exhaust you, to break you down, to see how you respond. It almost was like buds, like Navy SEAL training, to be totally honest with you, for the mind.
Yeah.
And it was like the third day in, sleep deprivation, long hours, all of that. And of course, my story is, oh, I'm tired because I didn't sleep the last 2 nights. This, at every reason
To quit.
to be tired. And as soon as I learned this concept in that moment, and I dropped all of the reasons of my story. And to be fair, all of those things were true. I wasn't making them up.
Yeah.
They were all true. But as soon as I dropped them and let them go, the fatigue was gone.
Yeah.
Like I literally was like, where did it go? I'm not tired anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of what we call flow state as well in performance. When I'm ultimately present, my flow state is like endless. My energy is endless. My ability is infinite in that state. So if
Yeah.
you can understand that concept and you can drop the stories, you're infinite possibility, in my opinion.
Yeah. And one of the things that like the kind of relates to that is I believe we spoke about this before where I've had this issue and tons of athletes have this issue where they wake up and they're just not motivated to get to the gym,
Mm.
right? They're just like, and I think it's like you said, it's the story that people create that motivation, this thing called motivation is something that is needed to drive you to do things. And I like since we've had that discussion and I've done some work on it myself, I realized that motivation is not the end all be all, right? There's going to be days where, regardless of your job, you're just absolutely not motivated to do it. You're not motivated, and you're gonna tell your story, and then you tell these stories in your head about why and whatever, and I'm tired, bullshit, and I'm not gonna go today or whatever. But you don't have to be motivated to be great. You just have to show up, in my opinion. And I can't tell you how many times I've shown up where it took every ounce of fiber of me, regardless if it was to the gym or to a client or whatever. And then when I got there, it was easy peasy. It was like another day at the ballpark. But it's that whole thing that you need motivation to do things, which I don't. You do, but you don't. You know what I mean?
Well, okay, let me. This is a big topic that I work on, right? And I
Yeah,
work with. It's a word that we erase from our athletes' vocabulary.
yeah,
Is the first thing. If you really want to break it down, if you understand what motivation means, it means a motive for action.
yeah,
Okay, that's what that word actually means. And people have taken that word and they've misconstrued it to meaning energy to do something,
mm,
which is not a motive for action. You
yeah.
understand?
I get.
So this is the separation. People have mixed the word motivation with what we call like willpower,
Yes.
and they're not the same thing. So because motivation has baggage, meaning people already think it means this way, we kind of get rid of it. I'm going to educate people on this for a second.
Yeah. Go for it.
It's actually not a bad term if you really know the real meaning. Like I just told you, it's a motive for action.
Yeah.
Willpower is having the energy to make the decision.
Okay. Gotcha.
And as the week or the day goes on, your energy to make decisions decreases.
Yeah.
Easy to decide what you want for breakfast, difficult to decide what you want for dinner,
Always. Always.
right? We know, like, we would suggest train in the morning because it's easy to decide to train in the morning. The
Yeah.
longer the day goes, the less energy you have to make the decision because what you understand is we are making thousands of decisions all day long.
All day. Yeah.
So the energy bank of decision making is draining throughout the day.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to make important decisions at night, forget about it. Unless like there's chronotypes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
Chronotype just means like some people do better in the evening, some people do better in the morning, whatever. If you understand chronotypes, maybe for some people it's the reverse.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to speak general for a second.
Yeah.
So now that we understand that, get rid of that word motivation. You know, like I actually think I had a client who wanted to work with me the other week and they said, would I motivate them when they fall off? And I said, absolutely not. We don't use that term. And I
Yeah.
never heard from them again. So, so like this idea of instead of using motivation, what we do is we coach level or degrees of importance.
Yeah.
So we create a value proposition. there's really, like, if you want to understand behavior on a really deep level, which is what I commit my life studying,
Yeah.
is there's your behaviors on the lowest level. Above that is your values. Above that is your beliefs, and then above that is like your personality.
Yeah.
If you understand those things, behaviors are driven by values, which is driven by beliefs. Let's just remove personality for right now because it's not something we really work on.
Yeah.
If you want to commit to something, let's just say like you want to prepare yourself for a fight. How about we use that reference because
Yeah.
it's relevant to you? Before you were going to fight, I would really sit down and be like, how important is this to you? Like, really, how important is it? Is this you want to do something because you want to be cool? You want to have something to post on social media? You want to be acknowledged by other people? If it's any of those things, forget it because you'll be disappointed and you won't compete. You
Oh,
won't finish.
those are the guys that help us build our records up. So
Yeah, 100%. If you really want to do it to test yourself, to challenge yourself, to see if you can do something that 99.9% of the people on the planet would never even attempt to do.
Yeah.
And we could get clear on that. Okay, we got that. Like, that's a real challenge. And then we have to kind of go into the belief system. It's like, what is your belief about the process of what it's going to take for you to get there?
Yeah.
Do you believe that you can do it? Do you believe that it's going to be difficult? Do you believe that you'll be willing to take the importance of it and bring that higher than the difficulty level?
Yeah.
Now, when we frame it that way, when you don't want to train, I would just say, dude, is it important enough to you to train?
Exactly.
And it's so easy. It doesn't matter if you're tired or not. If it's important to you, you will do it. And the best example for humans, you know this, you know it better than I do, to be honest with you. You got 2 little ones.
Yeah.
If they are important to you, when they're crying at 3 a.m.,
you get up.
You're going to get up. Not because you want to, not because you have the energy, not because you're motivated, for fuck's sakes. It's because it's important enough for you to do it.
Yes. And I mean, and here's a good example of how I to just expand on what you just said is it's very easy. Like somebody in my situation, you have two babies, growing kids. You got your own business. Your wife's got her own business too. It's very easy to make an excuse not to show up, right? So like my example to everybody is every Tuesday my wife has to be in the office and working, right? Which means I'm on dad duty. I got 2 of these little shits that I have to take care of. Now I have the option of just staying home and taking care of them, which I do sometimes because sometimes it is what it is. But more often than not, it's more important to me to get their ass ready, get them out, and I take them to the gym with me. And it's incredibly hard. It's not an easy process to get 3 human beings ready for an hour and a half workout. It's incredibly hard. It's tiring. It's frustrating. It takes
hard enough getting yourself ready, dude.
I know. I know. It takes a lot of time just to get them ready out the door, make it on time. Half the time I don't make it on time. And then when you leave, you're already tired from doing whatever you're doing. Then you have to get them ready and then you get home and you're like, I just want to sleep. And and a lot of people will look at that situation or and they're like, I have kids, I can't do this. I can't. But for me, it's so important to me to be there. Not just because of fighting and I got to train hard, but I also find it important for my kids to see me doing the thing I love to do all the time, no matter what. No matter what happens to me, like whether I'm injured, whether I'm tired, whatever. Daddy dragged your ass to the gym so that he can do the thing he's passionate about, work on it, work on a skill because it's important to me. And that's the only reason I drag my kids to the gym with me. Not because I think it's cool, not because I can't get childcare. I could easily ship them off to my parents' house or my wife's parents. I do it because it's important for me to be there, and it's important for my kids and other people to see me take this step. And the feedback I've gotten is I've actually motivated. Here's other guys have said I've inspired them to do
That's a better word. That's a better word.
Do the same, right? And so now I'm seeing is other people are bringing their kids to the gym too, just because they saw me do it, and they're like, "Yeah, I want him to see me do this work. I want him to see me pursue my passions." So, and it's almost like sometimes we have a daycare in there, but it's not that they can't find other solutions. It's because it's so important to you. You just find a way to do it. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I just spoke about,
Yeah,
right? And
and
it's funny. I still tell legendary stories of you coming in, bringing your kids, setting up the playpen, and just going to work. And
I s-
like
I still do it.
I use you as that a reference when I talk to people about difficulties.
Hey,
And let me give you like a really important insight too. That I'm pretty sure you already know just the way you're speaking, but it's important for everyone to understand this. Kids from like 0 to 7 are like buying a computer with no operating system in it.
yeah,
So everything that's happening to them during that age is like you're downloading operating systems into those kids, and what they see and what they experience and the energy. I'm a big guy on energy. I think that
yeah,
the energy that they're exposed to is building their development. And if you're doing things like that and you're taking them out and they're seeing the challenges you're going through and what you're pushing through, that's setting them up for this future success. When we just like nurture them too much, and that's what happened that's what I'm seeing in this now currently with a lot of the younger kids coming up.
yeah,
They've been coddled too much, they've been nurtured too much, they've been protected too much,
100%. Yeah,
and they're not going to get into what we call the warrior phase, which is the hero's journey of our development. They're always going to stay in the infant phase, where they depend on everyone else to give them what they need to survive. And it's actually going to be a bleak future, in my opinion, because
yeah.
even more so, there'll be much less leaders and many more followers, which creates a very dangerous environment for the
Well,
future.
just to like one of the things that to expand on what you said, to a good example of it is like since my daughter was tiny, I noticed, if you're at the park and one of the kids falls, the parent goes running.
Yeah,
And I understand that reaction. I really do. Um, because you're concerned. You're concerned about the well-being of your child,
of
their
course.
whatever. But that approach I have taken and it's been super successful is as long as she's not bleeding, I
Yeah.
tell her shake it off, and she physically will go like this. She'll shake it off, and she'll walk. Like I've implanted that into her. So like even on this past Tuesday, she was at the gym. We had a small turnout for pro training. So one of the coaches, they were literally playing tag with her while we were training in the ring. They're playing. She was running, and then there was like a lip in the wall where the wall comes out. She didn't
Yeah,
notice it. Boom! Smashes her head. Right.
yeah,
Starts crying. Coach is feeling bad. He's like, "Oh shoot, Ashton's gonna get mad." I look over. She's crying. I'm like, "Come over here." I'm like, "Oh, you're not bleeding. Shake it off."
yeah.
Right?
Is she bleeding? No, keep going.
Some parents will call it insensitive. I call it, I'm not gonna feed into that energy. That's that negative. Something terrible happened, yes. You're in a little bit of pain, yes. But from my life experience, you're not gonna die. You're not gonna like, so for me to hug you and to be until you calm down, I understand some parents want to do that, and in some certain situations it is necessary, but that's not one of them. But I see it all the time, and like you said, it's gonna build weak character for kids. Every time something negative happens to them, they're gonna be looking, "Where's the adult? Who's gonna hug me and make me feel better?" When really, you don't need a hug and feel better. You just need to, shake it off and move on, right?
Well, here's an important thing for people to understand: that children speak the language of energy.
Yes,
I'll say
100%.
that again. Children speak the language of energy. So if you're just showing up with this great energy, they fall, and your energy isn't which is exactly what you're saying. It's like, I don't care. You're like, I care, and because I care so much about your future and how you develop, that's
Yeah,
why I'm like, come on, get up, let's go, let's keep going. Like, you're good. I'm showing you love. If you fell and I turned and walked away,
that's a different
and I
story.
didn't even acknowledge you or even give you any sort of energy, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And most times when parents rush to their kid, it's their own fears that are now being transmitted onto the child. When I say speak the language of energy, fear, optimism, positivity, negativity, like they're feeding off of that. And
Yeah.
people have no idea how children communicate. They communicate through energy. And
Yeah.
once you understand that, you could be very strategic and aware and conscious of how you communicate with your actions, your behaviors, and your energy around kids.
Well, and what you just said is quite evident this day and age, especially. One, I'm comfortable talking about this publicly because I don't care. One of the things I've done, one of the things I'm very proud of me and my wife for doing is, I mean, we're lucky my kids are so young where they don't have to be at school and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
one of the things I've done is I have not, and I take pride in this. And it seems weird. People will probably judge me for it. I don't care. I have not put a face mask on my child for the entire pandemic. The reason being is because I do not want her to feel that fear. I don't think that it's appropriate for her, given the data that I have and the decisions that we've made as parents for this child, that it is a risk for her. And I
Mm,
don't want her putting that thing on her face, thinking that she should be scared of something
sure.
all the time. Because like you said, it's an empty computer with no operating system.
Correct.
Now I put that in at the tender age of 3. How do you think that's gonna go for the next 5 years? It's not gonna go well. The next time somebody sneezes at school and when all of this is over and there's no more, you don't have to wear the mask anymore. She's gonna be looking at well, someone sneeze like it's something, and it sounds weird, but I'm actually like strangely proud of it because it's actually incredibly hard to do. See it when you're in a city like Toronto, and it breaks my heart sometimes because I have you'll see it's like a 2-year-old and they put the mask on and all you can see is the little eyes, and I'm like that's not that's not living for them. You know what I mean? And given if the circumstances were different, if this thing affected them the same way it did, say, the elderly, I could have some justification and understanding why. But I take pride in that because I don't want her to feel that fear. I'll play the game certain places. I'll play the game. I'll put a little thing on my face. I'll play the game. But I don't want her to see that fear. And I don't want her to that coding to be put into her brain and that become normal. You know what I mean?
Oh, I do know what you mean.
Yeah. Because I'll give you another example. I have a child. My in-laws, their child, she went to kindergarten for the first year, and what they noticed was she was having a hard time reading facial expressions because she spent the whole day in the classroom with the teacher wearing the mask. So when she got mad at her kid at home or she was happy, the kid always looked confused because they spend 6 hours, whatever, in a day in the classroom. They're not seeing facial expressions anymore. And
Hmm.
for kids, that's primarily how they read and learn, right? Is facial expressions because they don't have full language and communication tools that I mean, it's one of the it sounds weird and some people will think I'm an asshole for saying, but it's one of the things I take great pride in is that throughout these 2 years I've sheltered her from those things as best as I can so that it doesn't become a part. I don't want her to think that this is normal because it's not. You know what I mean?
It's funny. I was talking to someone the other day, and something I was going to post on social media. Which, I don't post that often, but if I post something, it's probably important, right?
Yeah.
That even though I'm not shocked, there's a big part of me that is still shocked that more parents of young children going to school are not outraged and fighting back against wearing masks all day at school to these young children. And it just goes to show me something that I obviously believe in, is that our education system is not designed to educate you to have a successful life. Just to be very clear,
Yeah.
it's designed to, and I keep using the word, sound like a crazy person, but maybe I am, to program and indoctrinate children
100%.
to function in society as adults in a certain way. If it was designed to educate, we would learn more about the soul. We would learn more about the mind. We would learn more about finances. We would learn more about how to really understand your consciousness and your subconsciousness. But that doesn't happen.
No.
So most parents don't understand these things either. And they don't understand that, like I said, between like 0 and 7 is prime development years, and masking children during that time is the mental health issues, the self-esteem issues, the management of fear in the future is going to be a huge problem. And you kind of touched on mental health in the beginning. We started talking today, and we can talk more about that if you want.
Yeah.
The fact that they don't see that, and to be fair, the cost, remember, there's always a choice. The cost of not wearing a mask for children, which we've seen, is like their risk is like zero, basically.
It's pretty much zero.
It's pretty much zero. But remember, the powers that be will keep spinning things. I think the new thing is now, but now they can pass it to adults. They can be carriers or whatever the nonsense, agenda or
Yes.
their story is. The fact that this is going on is shocking to me, but at the same time not shocking, because I understand programming, I understand psychology on a very deep level. So I kind of just step back and be a little more saddened than disappointed that people are not awake, quote unquote, to what's going on, especially with the kids now.
And I mean, that's one of the Canadians are the first to criticize the US and Americans, but that's one of the things I admire about Americans is I do see quite a bit of pockets, especially in certain parts of America, where the kids are standing up for themselves. I believe it was in California where they put all their book bags down in front of the school and they said, if you mandate stuff, if you do that, we're not coming back to school. Right?
Yeah, there's been a lot of movements. Like Florida's had some movements, a
Yeah.
bunch of these places.
And it's one of the things that, as much as I love being a Canadian, it makes me a little sad seeing it because like you said, like these are your children. These are the future. This is like, I know it sounds cliche, right? They're the future. Yeah, of course they're the fucking future. They're the kids. But it's important for us to set them on the right path. And given this time, and I don't think this time is going away anytime soon. It's not going to just be 2 years. This is going to
It's a
drag on.
5-year process.
Yeah, it's going to drag on for a very long time. So knowing the fact that it's 5 years, it's going to be, and I think that's one of the problems too. I think people are too optimistic. The lockdowns end, they think it's over. So it's not done, right? There's more powers to play here than just a disease. That the disease was the catalyst to everything else. So knowing that this is a 5-year process, you have to, as a parent and as an older, even if you don't have kids, but you have nieces, nephews, you have to know that you have to protect them from all these fears and all these things. That I mean, I'm having a hard time articulating it because it pisses me off, so to speak, right? But like I know that this is not. I can't just say okay, the restrictions and the lockdowns and we're back to normal. It's not back to normal. The repercussions that it's going to have on the kids, especially, I don't care about me personally. I know that where I am as a human being, I can make it through everything, right? But kids and teenagers especially, and I think you've touched on this before with the hockey. You know what I mean? With the hockey leagues trying to mandate things for kids to play a sport, to just play hockey. Now you have to do a medical procedure just to play hockey. It's so outrageous. But some parents are just like, yeah, we got to do it. Well, I'm like, I personally, I would be like, hell no. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like you said, it makes me sad, so to speak. Because I mean, I know I'm in control of what I do in my house and my home and my family, but not everybody has that same confidence and the same thought patterns that we have, right? So,
Not at all.
and I mean, coming back to what we said about the iPads too, right? So when I was first bringing Aria to the gym with me, I would give her a tablet. Here's your show. Leave me alone, and it worked because of the addiction factor, right?
100%.
But what we noticed is at the start of the pandemic, she would wake up and ask for it because I was no longer taking her to the gym anymore because of the lockdown.
Yeah.
So she was wake up and ask for it. And so at the start, we would give it to her. And then I was starting to notice that she would sit there and watch the tablet and then have the TV going at the same time. And then if you change the screen on the TV, she would yell, even though she had, and it was a complete addiction. So what we did is totally just take the tablet away, got rid of it. Battery's dead, didn't charge it, done. And behavior changed immediately. And then like you said, it's like an empty operating system.
It
We
is.
I wiped the operating system clean, and now I don't get where's the tablet, Daddy Tab. She called it Daddy Tabby.
Yeah, yeah.
I take her to the gym. She's got her coloring book. She's got her tracing book. She's got her papers. She brings her boxing gloves. Do one of those things. Occasionally, you might get the tablet if we run out of the house and whatever. Like my son now, I'm bringing him. I took him with me on Wednesday, and everyone's like, "He's so good," and I'm like, "Cause I gave him his snacks and his bottle, and I said, shut up and watch." And he's just there living life. He's not staring at a screen or anything. I didn't give him the like I learned from my first kid what
Totally.
not to do with the second one. And I'm not giving him the opportunity to get addicted to those kind of things. I'm not saying that technology is bad. Like it's valuable in some senses, but I mean, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. Don't get me started on technology.
Now, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is obviously you're very very big into nutrition and health and well-being, and given the circumstances and the focus on health, I don't know if you were able to catch the podcast today with Moira, but
I haven't seen that one yet.
one of the things that we talked about is like diagnosing injuries and diagnosing conditions that people have, right? So
Sure.
whether it be nutritional deficiency, like a lot of people are having, like gluten intolerances, or you know, you sprain your ankle at the gym, or your back hurts from work, is one of the things that people don't have is it sounds a little, they don't have a medical team. Their first line of defense is always family doctor, right?
Mm.
Always, walk-in clinic. And while I'm not putting those people down and those professions down, they're not specialists in their area or in their field. They're generic MDs. So what ends up happening is someone goes in because they have lack of energy, they're always bloating, they feel like crap. The first line of defense is obviously an MD whose background isn't in nutrition, isn't in anything else. So they automatically diagnose them with something and then set them on the wrong path. So I wanted to know from you is, for me specifically, I have, people like you. I have, when I tore my Achilles, I went straight to my knee surgeon, right? I was able to contact him, and then he got me the right people and I got the surgery right away. Now, not everybody has that ability to do that, but how important is it for like a person to be able to find the right practitioners for the right causes, if you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's obviously very important. Um, Let me frame something a little different first,
Yeah.
and then I'll spin back around, because I want to keep some consistency of what we've been talking about, because it's perfect time to give an example of something we've already talked about.
Yeah.
We talked about kids, programming from 0 to 7. At that age, what's a learned trait or a learned belief? I talked about, remember, behaviors, values, beliefs.
Yeah.
Is, you get sick, you go to your family doctor, they diagnose, they prescribe, they send you home. What happens in that scenario is people are programmed that they have given the responsibility and power of their health away to a doctor.
Yes.
So the doctor is the gatekeeper of your health.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very much against that
Yeah.
system,
Me too. Me too. Yeah.
to be very clear, but people are so blind by that, where what the doctor says is like gospel, so to speak,
Yeah.
which is absolutely not true. So the first, now to answer, now we understand that the first answer your question, before you get a team around you, you have to get clear that you are the owner, the director, the president, the CEO
Health.
of your own health.
Yeah.
And if you don't get clear on that, it doesn't matter what anyone else says, you won't go in the right direction.
Yes, 100%.
Right? So first and foremost, you got to take ownership, which I like to say stands for own your shit,
Yeah.
and really, really take charge of that. Once you do that, because I guarantee you 99.9% of people, we like to use that, eh? 99.9, that's our number today. Because that applies to every kid,
Yeah.
every situation. Like 99.9% of people aren't even doing the basics that would even warrant them to go beyond that. So for example, an athlete might ask me, or a new client, what's the best supplement for energy?
Yeah.
And I would say, how much water are you drinking? And they would look at me funny. Like, that doesn't answer the question, coach. And I'm like, well, the supplement doesn't matter if you're not drinking water. And they'd be like, well, I'm drinking this amount. I'm like, okay, cool. And then like, can you answer my supplement question? And I'd be like, well, where is your water coming from? Would be my next question.
Yeah.
What is the source of your water? And they just be like, oh, can you just answer the question? I'm like, no, because there's many more things that I know you're not doing that are more valuable to, in this case, your energy,
yeah,
beyond a supplement. So what are you eating? Where is your food coming from? How often are you eating? How much water are you drinking? Where is your water coming from? I mean, as you know me, I'm crazy on like sources of food, water. Like I'm crazy on that stuff. What does your sleep look like? What are the basic patterns that you can own? And then, and you might need someone like me or you to get people thinking that way. So I think it's good to have like at least and generally one advisor, quote unquote, or coach.
Yes.
Who you trust, who you believe in, who has a really good understanding of the foundational stuff that you can refer to. And my rule with me is don't Google me, meaning don't Google everything I say. Is he correct? Is that true? Because we can get 100 different opinions. However, it's confusing. It's paralysis by analysis. So for most people, having a really intelligent person who they can rely on, I think is great. And then generally speaking, that person has the network that you need.
Okay, I get where you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like I would be the guy, for example, as you know, I'm one of your coaches, that if we need to see a sports doctor, okay, I got my sports doctor. If we need to see like someone for IV therapy, we got that guy. If we need someone to do like an adjustment or some like osteopath work, okay, we got that guy. And then like we start to create this web, but I still think that's important. That this is what I pride myself in, is like you have kind of that one person who is that key advisor. I work with a ton of athletes, and like for example, hockey player, they have their hockey coach, they have their team's strength coach, they have their team therapist, they have all of that, and most of them are not very good, as we know. It's like I'm the guy that like, let me help you put all those pieces together, and really simplify everything, and being like, hey, let's this, but I'm not telling you how to play hockey, for example. Like, let the hockey coach handle that. But who is that person that can kind of really help you? And that's why it's good to have someone in your space, to your point, like that. And someone who's willing to spend time with you. Yeah, and there's an exchange. There's a cost for their time. But you go to your family doctor, they're trying to get you in and out that door as fast as possible so they can roll the next prescription.
They got 10 minutes. I believe that's the OHIP equivalent for the doc. They have 10 minutes to meet, like if because of how little OHIP pays the doctors, that's how much they got to pump out, right?
Right. And let's be clear that doctors are, and I'm not disrespecting doctors, there are some great doctors and they serve a wonderful purpose, but they're in the sick care business.
Yes.
They're not in the health care business.
Yes. 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So like I actually went pre-med university. I was going to become a doctor. That was my whole mission until I started spending time in hospitals and I realized this is sick care and I want to do health and performance care.
Yeah.
So that's why I took the route that I took instead.
Yeah.
So like that's not where you go where you want health and vitality.
No, that's where you go when you're fucked up and you need help.
Well, that's where you go when the sickness is inhibiting your ability to live.
Live, yeah.
Right. That answer the question, sort of?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. And to expand on it a bit is like what like so I get this a lot too, where people come to me with certain injuries or this hurts or that hurts or whatever, and it's very similar to what you said. My first advice would be like, try drinking some more drinking some more water,
Totally.
getting some more sleep, and and I don't like I'm not comparing myself to an MD by no means, but a lot of my experience and my ability to help people actually came from personal experience of hurting shit. Now, one of the benefits of mixed martial arts is that you pretty much fuck your whole body up at some point. So a lot of the things people come to, like, I use this example pretty much is I had a new client and I did boxing with her and we hit pads. And then 3 days later, she texts me. She's like, Ashton, since I saw you last, I can't move my arms. Everything hurts. I'm in so much pain.
Sure.
Should I go to the doctor? And I said, absolutely not. She's like, why not? And I'm like, was there a trigger mechanism? Like, was there a specific incident, a traumatic moment that caused this? And she couldn't answer that. And I'm like, no, there wasn't. Right? I know for a fact it was your first time doing boxing. So I'm going to tell you right now, and we're going to use this number again. I'm 99.9%
So
sure.
overused now. We've ruined it.
Your muscles are just really fucking angry at you for doing something brand new. And you just need to give it some time, drink some water, recover, maybe get a little sweat in there to get some blood movement on. And I'm pretty sure, I'm 99.9%
Yeah.
in like 2 days, you're going to feel fine. And lo and behold, she did. But my point of saying that story is her first line of defense was, should I go see the family doctor?
Right. This just proves my point is that through our programming, the doctor holds the ownership of our health. And when I say our, that does not include me. I'm not in that world.
Me neither.
But 99 point, dude, we've lost all credibility on the 99.9. But
we're spreading misinformation now.
Yeah, we're just conspiracy theorists. But I gotta really also mention one thing. You're saying through your experience and the stuff you've done, to be really good at what you do, you also have to recognize that not everybody is the same.
Yeah.
And it's important that you meet people where they're at.
100%.
Meaning what I give to this person might not be the same as what I give to this person.
Yeah.
And this whole idea, well, it worked for me, so it will work for you thinking too, is like really dangerous thinking. And it's really important to always treat people like an individual, to meet them where they're at, understand where they're at, and then start them from where they're at. Don't start them from beyond where they're at.
Yeah. And that's for some reason I have just become the trainer of the elderly. So I've got a lot of older clientele, which I'm absolutely fine with. And one of the things that I had to, like you just said, is it's easy to take a blank slate, like a 20-year-old or a 19, 18-year-old who, maybe doesn't have a lot of fitness experience and, make them fit.
Sure.
To me, that's the easiest ideal scenario. You give me a blank slate, whether they be obese or, a little overweight, no problem, right? You got a generally healthy body to go. Now you talk about, 60s, 70s. I have 3 80-year-olds I work with,
Yeah,
right? I'm not like, and I believe I've said this to PK before. It's like, it's very easy for someone to say, "Hey, do lunges and do squats and whatever." But for those people, those are not important things necessarily for their body and for preserving their lifestyle. For me, when I anybody 70 and over that I work with, my immediate because I have a background in long-term care, that was my first job out of university. My immediate attention is on fall prevention.
correct,
Those people.
correct.
I cannot make you strong in the legs, strong upper body, whatever, if you fall and break your hip.
That's
Because if
right.
you fall and break your hip, you're done. I've seen it. That's the reason I left long term care, is because I did it for like 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, and I would make friends with people, and I would come into work the next day. They would say, "Oh, they fell," and
Yeah,
within 2 months they're dead.
yeah, yeah,
And for me personally, I couldn't handle that negativity at such a young age.
yeah. I get it.
Yeah, but I took the lessons from it, and I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna make you, like I said, there's no limit to age. I don't think I hate when people say I'm too old to do this, because that's bullshit. Like you know, how many people
Or
are,
you know what? So BS is bullshit, which is also what we said is belief system.
yeah, and like you know, how many people I'm like, you should start jujitsu because it's the ignorant jujitsu thing, but it's like jujitsu solves everything. Right? But, you know, how many people I said, healthy, strong people. I'm like, you should start jujitsu because I really think it's a good fit for you. Like, oh, I'm too old for that. I'm like, fuck. Immediately when they say that, I'm like, fuck, okay. I'm not talking to you about that anymore, right? But I put no cap on exercise, fitness, and wellness in terms of age.
Yeah,
Only thing I do though is I cap how I approach each individual body. So, like, I'm going to use my 80-year-olds as an example. All 3 80-year-olds come from different walks of life, and but first thing is first, I don't want them to fall because I know the consequences of that is dire. So I work
yeah.
on fall prevention. But then,
Priority. Yeah,
where I go from there also depends on their body. I'm not going to put somebody like that into a huge lunge program and make them carry like I actually love training those kind of people because it challenges me more
makes you think.
to makes me think. So how do I adjust to meet their needs to get their body to a functional spot? Because they're not looking for performance. They're not looking to run a marathon. They're not looking to play a recreational sport. They're just looking to live pain free.
Mhm.
And then it's my job to assess the body and say like, so that's where I rely heavily on feedback. And one of the things I do a lot is my first question is, how are you feeling today? And I judge that answer. I go in with like 3 different plans of how I'm going to approach that
100%. Yeah,
hour. And when I get that answer, I'm like, okay, now I know how I'm going to approach this session, because I take that feedback, that initial feedback. If someone's energy is low, we might like. There's some days where you do have to push through, right? But like then again, you look at the body. It's an 80-year-old. What am I going to push through, right? If I push them through this, they're not going to be able to go and play cards and do all the recreational activities they do. I judge it based on that, and then I adjust it based on their body of the day, right? And I think that's one of the things that's kind of lost in the profession a bit, where it's the old saying, no two bodies are alike, right? And I approach it that way with especially older people, is I stick to the basics. And when you work out and when you do things, it's to feel good. It's not necessarily for high performance, if you get what I'm saying.
yeah. I'm with you.
And then I take that same philosophy and I apply it to younger people. Except younger people, I give them the kick in the ass because if they're like, you know what I mean?
They need a bit of that
Yeah, you need a bit of that.
slacking.
Now, before I let you go, because I got to get out of here soon. Um,
Yeah,
I like to ask this question because I know your background in sport and all that kind of stuff, but this, like every fitness pro, every wellness professional like yourself, I like to ask a question. What do you think in the entirety of the planet is the hardest sport for an athlete to participate in?
Oh man.
Yes.
Well,
I know it's
as you
very
know,
subjective, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
but what do you think is the hardest one based on?
Well, I have to be careful because I could easily validate you, because you're looking for
No,
validation.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm not.
And as two guys who both have fought at a very high level, you know, I would often say that obviously fighting is one of the most difficult sports to do.
Yeah.
And so I am going to say fighting on one, and I'm going to give two examples, okay? And I have to give two because it depends on the criteria of hardest.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
that fair?
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah.
Okay. So like PK and I, we have these debates all the time, right? Who's the best athlete of all time? What's the hardest sport of all time? Et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Up until a few years ago, I would have just said fighting instantly, but this whole new wave that's coming to the mainstream media, which is not new, but it's new to mainstream, is free climbing, these free solo mountain climbing stuff. Have you ever seen the movie Free Solo?
I haven't seen Free Solo. No, I haven't.
If you have not seen Free Solo, everyone needs to watch it. These are guys climbing these rock faces. Free solo means with no rope.
Yeah. So basically, you can plummet to your fucking death.
So one mistake and you're dead.
Yeah.
Understand? So if you want to say difficulty, are we talking about what are the consequences of the sport? Then nothing trumps that, because one mistake and the consequence is immediate death.
Death.
Fair?
Fair enough. Yes.
Okay. So now you could argue that death is an easy thing, to be fair, because there's no more humility and ridicule or shame in death.
Yeah.
But fighting, on the other hand, it's the hero's journey, it's the warrior's path.
Yes.
And the preparation is extremely difficult. I think people complicate it more than they need to be totally fair.
100%.
And we've talked about that, and I've given you shit about that over the years.
Yeah.
And the execution of nowhere to hide, going into a ring or a cage with literally nowhere to hide, at the risk of severe injury and potentially death, to be fair.
People have died, yeah.
Yeah. Embarrassment, like I said, shame, all of these things, again, with nowhere to hide.
Nowhere. There's nowhere.
So like, I'm not trying to validate you, but as also a former fighter, I've often used fighting as a reference of, if you were able to compete in a, and I hate to use the word fight, but in a contact or combat sport,
yeah,
you can do freaking anything with your life.
100%.
Because I used to compete. I fought on a national team, fought on the pro-am circuit, and I was working in the corporate world for a while, working in a sports company, and people are getting nervous going into a boardroom to give a presentation. And I just drove to New York City, fought in front of a few thousand people, drove back, and went to work on Monday, and my face is all mangled. And you guys, you're worried about giving a presentation. It's like, the whole point is, I'm not saying anyone's better than anyone else, but the more you can make yourself uncomfortable in your life, the easier your life will ultimately become.
Yeah.
And it's that old, like, Bruce Lee saying, right? Hard choices, easy life. Easy choices, hard life.
Hard life. Yeah. And to circle back to kind of because I have another sport too that I want to talk about, but I want to give this example to people is when shit gets like rough, like like when you have a shitty day, right? Where just one thing after the other, after the other, after the other, you're like, what more can go wrong? This fucking day, right? I always, because of my experiences in combat sport, I always circle back to this one thing, right? And the one thing is the worst position I can be in a fight is full mounted. Like I'm full mounted, and I'm not on top.
Yeah. You're in the worst position.
I'm absolutely exhausted, meaning like I am tired. I can't like I physically there's lactic acid everywhere, and I'm sure every fighter and every person who's experienced fighting has felt this feeling before, where I'm in a position of complete dominance against a highly skilled person, and they're pummeling my face in. They're
Correct.
pummeling my face in. Now, sometimes that happens in a fight. It's happened to me in a fight. Sometimes it happens in training.
Yeah.
Regardless of where it happens, it's the worst fucking spot because there's no way out until that person decides they want to stop, until they yell yield like in fucking Game of Thrones, or yell yield and it's over, right? Until they decide to stop, that won't end, right? And to me, because of being in those experiences, if I'm not in that experience, I don't care anymore. You know what I mean? If that's not what's happening to me, life is breezy. So I'm able, like you said, I'm able to take that lesson and that thread of serious physical harm, and in the real world, where that's not the case. I'm like, well, life's not so bad, right? But I will play. Here's another sport I haven't.
Wait, before you jump ahead,
Yeah,
a piece of advice to people that I like to give is you've been given the gift of this amazing device, machine, whatever you want to call it, this
yeah,
body, and also this mind. And to not ever try to push it to a limit, to test it, to see what you can get out of it, to never do that is very disappointing and probably very unfulfilling in your life. And to be very clear, I don't think everyone should take up fighting and go fight in a ring or a cage. That's not for everybody, but maybe it's go and compete. You don't have to compete. Go and run, go and jump, go and try to lift something, go and try to endure mentally and physically. And what you get out of that is so more valuable than any pair of shoes or fancy car or watch or house
yeah.
or anything that you'll ever get. And you'll get so much fulfillment out of pushing yourself and experimenting with being uncomfortable. I
Uh,
can give me your sport.
that's the sport I was gonna say is Ironman.
Yeah.
Now, like my old head coach, he's taken it up. He's a fucking Ironman now, and he's
Yeah.
doing. And for me, the I can barely do like 6 kilometers without feeling like shit. Like, not saying I'm not in shape. I'm just saying where my mind says, okay, that's enough. Right now, you say you got to do 20 plus kilometers
Sure.
plus 30 kilometers ride plus another 40 fucking kilometers swim. To me, that's the insanity level on that is fucking bonkers. Right. So, and it may not be as physically taxing as, say, like a fight, but the mental capacity that goes into just being able to endure that length of physical activity, I find is to me, one of the most challenging things in the world in terms of sport.
Yeah.
And
And I've coached a bunch of triathletes over the years, and I have all the respect in the world for that. Um, if we want to debate
yeah,
just for fun. And
yeah,
I'm not a big person who debates. I think people, whatever you believe is true. It's not a right or wrong conversation. Um, the one thing I take out of the triathlete thing is you don't have an opponent,
yeah,
so there isn't this overcoming the slaying the dragon concept. That's one thing.
yeah.
Two, in an Ironman, so to speak, you're primarily focusing on one energy system. In a fight, it depends how long the fight is, you're generally tapping into multiple energy systems,
Yeah, yeah.
which means the preparation
Is
for
more.
fighting to prepare the different energy systems. Where in triathlon, I work with them, I still do work on the different energy systems, but it's very heavily loaded on one specific energy system.
Yeah.
So, like, not to crush your
No, no, no,
challenge.
no, you're not crushing me. I agree with you. I'm just saying the mental capacity to endure such a long.
Oh,
Yes.
it takes a special type of human
Yeah.
being. It's not for everybody, just like fighting is not for everybody.
Yeah.
it requires a certain personality trait. It also requires a certain, oh, not to get woo woo with the audience because I want to understand this, but different people are different energy sources.
Yeah.
So some people, for example, can generate energy. They're called generators. Like
Yeah.
they just need energy, they can make it. Someone like me who's not a generator, I'm kind of what you would call like a projector. I see, I lead, I have this great energy, but then I also need to kind of go back into my own cave, so to speak, and recharge. I
Yeah.
can't just make energy on a whim. I have to be very strategic with my energy. So again, it takes a certain type of energy personality, so to speak, to be able to be successful at that.
And here's one before we wrap this up.
Yeah,
This is just one of the things you were just saying before we talked about the triathlon thing. We're putting your body through difficult things. There was like a quote. I'm gonna butcher it right now, but
sure.
every day I wait. Like I'm 32 years old, right? And I've put myself through the ringer already in terms of injuries and all that kind of stuff. And so, most people in my shoes, my positions would say, "Hey, I'm going to start playing it safe. I'm going
Yeah,
to preserve what I have, and I want to."
sure.
Okay, and I agree. There's certain things I need to preserve, like my brain. I got to preserve it, right? But my body, fuck that. Like when I say that, I don't say that like I'm going to be reckless and just do. What I'm saying is, there's a quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but it was like, "I don't want to arrive at my grave in a safely ensconced, beautiful, functional body. When I get to that point, when I get to my last day on this planet, I want to say, holy shit, what a ride." And that's how I kind of approach living, and that's how I conquer my fears. Like there's certain mornings I wake up where my knees, I'll tell you right now, they're trash. They're coach. They're trash. They're like, you don't want to do anything today. But in my head, I'm like, hey man, I rather have this feeling of my knees being a little achy and really sore, because I've done stuff and I've pushed myself, than saying, "Oh, my back hurts because I was sitting all day and I was not doing." You know what I mean? I that so if when it comes back to what you said, that challenging yourself, you know, for me personally, when I get to my last day, when I don't care what anybody believes, but when Jesus says it's my last day on this planet, I want to be like, "Holy shit, what a ride!" I don't want to say, maybe I could have." You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think just to cap it off, if I can offer a suggestion,
Go
I,
for
I am one of your coaches, so I'm not out of line here.
it.
I would always approach those, and I take that back. I'm not a big fan of using the word always, if you don't know that by now. All with things like always and never, if you hear people speaking that way, it's actually a very dangerous way to speak.
Yeah,
Okay. So I would often frame those things of be careful that you don't say the idea of like, I don't care
yeah.
and I'm just going to go ham, so to speak.
Oh, I do care, but
Right. So, like, hold on. It's this idea of coming from a place of love, meaning, and that's how I handle all of things in my life. I come from
yeah,
a place of love. I put love into my body. And yeah, man, I go hard on it. I push it to its limits. And
I take care of
not,
it.
not, but,
Yeah,
and I invest a lot of time and energy and money, if you want to call it that, into keeping it healthy, making sure it's not in pain all the time, making sure I'm not waking up feeling broken all the time. It's how am I pushing it super hard, but also I respect and love it so much
yeah,
that I want to make sure I'm doing things to make it strong because I want to be doing extreme quote unquote stuff
my entire life.
till the end.
Yeah,
Like that day when you said when the maker calls or whatever you want to call it, whatever it is to you,
yeah.
I'd be like, "Okay, I just got to finish this training session first, and then I'm good. Then we can go. Then we can
Yeah,
go. You know what I mean? Like, and I want to be able to do that, at a relatively high level,
for
always.
yeah,
Not get to the point where like I've destroyed it so much that I can't even do it anymore.
yeah.
So that's the fine line
Yeah,
to
yeah,
keep
and that's sort of what I meant to. I didn't mean like I want
Yeah,
to destroy myself and beat myself into a bloody pulp until I'm like I have nothing left.
I
I
get
mean,
it.
like put yourself through hard stuff all the time, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, so that when you do get to that point, you can be like, that was a fucking fun ride.
100%.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. Coach, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, where they can seek you if they want to enlist your services or just to reach out to you. How can they find you?
Yep. Our website, which is strong-athlete.com. We don't own strongathlete.com, but if you search Strong Athlete, we'll come up.
Yeah.
On social media at Strong Athlete. If you ever want to get a hold of me, you can find me through either one of those.
Your podcast, what?
The Strong Athlete Life, and that's Spotify, iTunes, all of the platforms.
And everywhere. So he's super knowledgeable. One of the best people on the planet in terms of knowledge and good person. So fucking find him, talk to him, follow his shit. Also, too, make sure you like and subscribe. Fucking people always tell me, oh, they love what we're doing and what I'm doing. So then fucking show some love. Subscribe, like, because the more you guys do that, the more I can do and more I can bring. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. And that's it. Peace out. Everybody, thank you for watching. Please do me a favor. Click the like below. Share on YouTube. Share on Instagram. Share on Facebook. Spread the word so I can keep creating more content for you and keep providing you with a great podcast experience. Peace out.